Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kidley, and welcome to our coverage on E3 2016. The EA press event just wrapped up, so we're going to go over all of the fun little details for that event. Joining me for all the E3 coverage is going to be Jaalen. How's it going today?
All right. Should be fun day.
Yeah. So traditionally, EA has a pretty poor press event, and this year did not disappoint. Pretty much the same. So they kicked off their show with Titanfall 2. Now, I forget, did you play Titanfall at all?
No, never played it.
Now, I actually played it during the beta, and I didn't think it was worth getting. I know there's some people that really like that game, but a lot of people didn't. And it kind of fell into the trap of these multiplayer-only games like Evolve did, and it's like it came out, it was kind of hot for maybe a week, and then it just fell apart.
Right.
But what we did find out about Titanfall 2 was that it's going to be released on October 28th, 2016. It will be for the PS4, Xbox One, and the PC. They did confirm that this one will have the single-player campaign. And I'm just kind of looking over my notes here a little bit. Was there anything else that you recall that they sort of talked about for that game at
No,
all?
I mean the graphics looked good. They're expanding it to the PS4, so I think we're really hurting for subscribers after the first one, and they want to get more.
Yep.
And then, of course, the single player. Now, one thing that concerns me about EA games when they do the single players for multiplayer games is it's really just a tutorial, and there's not a whole lot of content there.
Yeah, usually really short, maybe 4 hours or something.
Right.
But yeah, they showed some gameplay, and the multiplayer on that, is probably their strongest part. Again, that's all they did last year. So it will be pretty interesting to see what they're doing for the single player. It does sound like they're going to have a bunch of new, Titans, which is their robots that you can get in and out of. And the one trailer that they did show, they're bringing back, the wall running and the jetpacks and all that. And they showed off some other stuff where they were actually like falling out of the sky and they were like hooking people and kicking them in midair and some goofy stuff like that. I mean, it looked good.
Yeah, it definitely expanded it from just the walls. Those grappling hooks are going to add a different dimension to gameplay, and we'll see what people come up with later. But for right now, I mean, it looks good, but I still think it's going to be it's going to be a fad. Couple weeks, couple months maybe, and then it'll die off.
Yep. Well, any final thoughts on that one before we move on?
No.
Yeah. So after that, they got into Madden 17, and I don't know if there's really too much we need to say about that. I mean, those games always look good. One statement that I wrote down that they actually said is that this one was going to be the best balanced one ever, and whenever they say that, I always like, all right, we'll see.
Right. I haven't seen a whole lot of fixes or changes in the mechanics of Madden in years. Quit playing Madden, 4 or 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And, sure, the graphics get better, gets more lifelike, but the gameplay itself doesn't change.
Yeah. So if you're a fan of Madden and you like what they've been doing, this one's probably going to be good for you as well. Next up was the highly anticipated Mass Effect Andromeda, and going in, a lot of people were really hoping for maybe a long gameplay segment, and unfortunately, we didn't really get much.
Yeah, no, I think other than it being on the Frostbite engine, we didn't get a whole lot. I think it's definitely going to be a game that you want multiple monitors, immersion, stuff like that. But from what we saw, it's almost the same as what they showed last year.
Yeah. Now, I will go over some of the details just in case there's people who have no idea what's going on. And they sort of just reconfirmed the details that we already know. And that is that Mass Effect Andromeda is going to take place after 3. And the main point of the game is you're basically looking for a new place for the Earthlings, whatever you want to call them, to actually go. And I forget exactly what they said. You might have to correct me on this, but they said that you are going, was it thousands of light years or millions of light years from Earth? Do you recall what that was?
I don't remember. No, I missed that part.
But it seems to me like your character is going to be put into hibernation or something and then shipped away. Isn't that what you got out of it?
Yeah, definitely. They're obviously leaving wherever they were and going to a new area, so you kind of wake up and that starts your story. But again, that's all they showed. They didn't show anything that is going to say, what the story's about. No plot details yet.
Yeah, and during their trailer, the very, very last scene was a girl like waking up. I think that's probably going to be your main character, and I think that was just a demonstration showing that you will be able to do male or female again. So they were kind of showing the femship aspect of that. I think.
Right.
Now, one thing that they did show that was new, or at least it was new for me, is it appears that the name of our ship in game is going to be called the Tempest. So that was, and it looked kind of similar to the Normandy.
Yeah, I mean, it was sleek like the Normandy. It looked a little more transportish, kind of like the big ship in Battlestar Galactica, not the fighters, not the cruisers or anything.
And there was a couple of shots that showed some bigger ships, and there's some speculation that one of those bigger ships might be the new like Citadel or something like that. But yeah, who really knows on that? But Mass Effect Andromeda is set for a release spring 2017. It was supposed to be fall this year, but it actually did get pushed back to Q1 of 2017. But I'm a huge Mass Effect fan. I can't wait for that one to come out, and it definitely looks good. So we'll go ahead and we'll move on. They did a big presentation. This was probably their biggest presentation on FIFA 17, and I can't really say much about that. I mean, it looks good, but I don't really know anything about soccer or football.
Yeah, nobody cares. Let's go to the next topic.
Okay. Next up is EA Originals, and this is a new thing that they're doing to try and bring in indie developers. And you actually had a really interesting comment on that.
Well, I just think it's EA has spent the last 10 years just buying up game companies, and I think this is just the indie market kind of got real big within the last couple of years, and I think they're trying to capture that and monopolize that as well. They showed that game Fee. Looks good. It's an indie company, and but it's basically going to be EA saying, we support it, so you have to play it.
Right. And anybody who's been on Steam, like Jaalen said, the last couple years, there's been some incredible indie games that have been released on Steam last couple years. And in some people's eyes, indie games are almost the new thing because they're, well, generally speaking, they're cheaper than these full releases, and they're just as good and provide just as much content. So yeah, it does seem like EA is trying to poke their head into that market. And then, as Jaalen mentioned, there was the one title they did show, which was called Fee, and I just wrote down a few little things about that. And they said that it's a game without words, perhaps like Ori and the Blind Forest and some of those other ones. And you're like some kind of a tiger cub thing, whatever, something.
Yeah, I don't know. The graphics definitely looked interesting. It was kind of an open world, and they just said, here, we're going to put you in here, and we're not going to tell you anything. Mm-hmm. So with the way games have been going lately, I don't, going back to an open sandbox like that, I don't know how well it'll do.
Yeah. And I actually wrote down in my notes that I thought the artwork looked kind of like WildStar for people who are familiar with that game. They're not using as much on their color palette. It seemed like there was a lot of blues and greens in that game, but I thought it looked like WildStar. And then the last couple things on that is it was a game about discovery, emotion, and relationships. So I have to see if that one takes off for them. Next up was their very interesting Star Wars montage. They did sort of confirm two things. And that is Star Wars Battlefront 2 is going to be next year for 2017. And Visceral's Star Wars game, whatever it's going to be, is going to be for 2018. And for my SOTOR viewers, they did not say anything about SOTOR. So there's absolutely nothing to report about that. But, I mean, what did you think about that little segment they did?
That one towards the end where they showed the guy walking out of the bar and those graphics on whatever that was amazing. But other than that, my notes is just a big old blah because that's what Star Wars was on there.
Yeah, some other people commented it was like a 30-second commercial, and it was just like boom, 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 boom. Here's 10 games. And it's like, what? What did we just see? I don't know. But I might actually do a little bit of an analysis video on that later on and actually slow that down, and we'll bring that to you guys later. But that's all they said for Star Wars games, is just basically, here's like 5 games, and here's like our 5 studios. It might even been more than that. They went over it so quick. But it's basically, over the next like 5 years, there's going to be a bunch of really good Star Wars games. That's what I got out of it.
Right, but what those Star Wars games are, nobody knows.
Yep. And finally, the last game that they ended the show with was Battlefield 1. And Battlefield 1, it's Battlefield 1 versus Call of Duty, which is going into space. And if you've been following this on the internet at all, you kind of know what's going on and how people are just absolutely destroying the new Call of Duty right now in favor of Battlefield 1 because they want a different timeline, and Battlefield 1 is going to go back to World War 1, and they sort of confirmed that, a lot of these crappy weapons or old school weapons and even the melee weapons like pitchforks and shovels and all that stuff's going to be actually available for use in Battlefield 1.
Yeah, they're definitely taking that Frostbite engine that Battlefront was built off of, and making it fully destructible. I mean, what level of destruction is going to be, interesting because, that you saw the tanks, you saw, all kinds of different stuff that is in the game, and, where are they going to go with it? What level are they going to do with it?
Yep. And we got to see a little bit of gameplay on that. They actually are holding, or they were trying to hold, an hour-long gameplay session on that. It was 64-player multiplayer, and it looked good. It looked really good. And sort of like what Jaalen said, everything is supposed to be destructible, and there's the big Zeppelins that are in that game, and apparently the Zeppelins, if and when they crash, they can crash at random. Whatever they land on is going to be destroyed, because a lot of people are trying to compare it to Star Wars Battlefront, and when you're playing a match with the AT-ATs, it's like they are always going to do the same thing, and apparently that's not the case in this game, so I guess we'll see.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it looks like a huge expansion over what they did with Battlefront. Obviously, Battlefront was the first IP on that engine, so, played it a little conservative. It still looked great. Mm-hmm. This one's going to be, it's going to be interesting what happens. They got flamethrowers in there. What's the level of detail on that? How effective is that going to be? So it's going to be something worth watching. Might pick it up. 60 or 32 versus 32 is going to be fun. Played Battlefield 4, that was fun, but it's not one that's high on my radar yet. But after watching that gameplay, it definitely moved up a few spots.
Yeah, and they did mention that the game is going to have dynamic weather as well, and that's supposed to change gameplay, whether it's foggy or rainy or maybe snow, that sort of thing as well.
That, and they didn't really get into whether it was going to be dynamic gameplay in a match or if it was just going to be each match. But I would imagine it was going to be each match separately because of how short they can be.
Yeah. But that's pretty much all they had to say for the EA press event. Do you have any final words? Any final thoughts?
No, pretty lackluster. EA is always lackluster. I don't know why they have so much content that they can bring to these shows and they don't do it. It's like, just throw stuff in your backpack and we're going to take it down there and show it off. But
yeah,
nothing huge. Definitely looking forward to other ones.
Yeah, so we got Bethesda coming up. I'm actually going to put up the schedule here real quick. So this is sort of the schedule here for the next couple of days, but we got Bethesda tonight at 9 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time, and we'll get that video out as soon as we can. But yep, definitely stay tuned for our continuing coverage on E3 2016. But yep, Bethesda's up next, and so we'll see you guys for that one.